Try going a week without listening to music. Try going one day without listening to music. It's everywhere. It's on the radio when you drive your car. It's at the store when you go buy your groceries. It's in the elevator. It's on the news. It's on every social media post. Well, not every social. It's on a lot of social media posts. Every TV, movie, commercial. Music is everywhere, and it has a high value on an industrial level, but that value isn't being distributed in a fair way to the artists. So if I could change anything, it would be that artists get paid a little bit more money. And I think it's fair because a lot of people undervalue the service of music. Like any market, it's driven by supply and demand. Now, in the Okanagan specifically, I think there's some hope for this because the demand for music right now I think it's higher than normal because of the restrictions being lifted and the desire for people to listen to music. And I think the supply is slightly lower than normal because of a whole bunch of musicians, a whole bunch of professional musicians had to get careers in other sectors. So that opened up a void for other emerging artists and other artists to come in and fill that void.
When the bands would come in, I'd always give them a drink to start with. And, just break the ice and during setup, they probably had a long drive and, have some snacks out or something for them. But I think everyone could do more to help artists. They need to care about them. Really, they need to be guaranteed a place to stay and give them food. These musicians are traveling on like very little budget. And when they call them a starving musician, it's true. And so they need to support the musicians to the best of their ability all the time.
Maybe not opening up more venues in the sense of opening up new buildings, just make it more accessible, not just for metal, for every kind of music. Because like you mentioned earlier, like wineries, like they have tons of music, and yes, it's the jazz and the pop and all that stuff, which is great. I love it. But for bands coming up, it's really hard. You have to have boots on the ground at all times just to get through the door. And you have to find people like the unsung heroes of all of this are the guys that do sound, the guys that spend all their time and their money making sure idiot musicians like me get to go up on stage. I don't know how to run lights. I go up there, there's lights on. I don't run sound. There's like people that spend all their time, money, and energy to make it easy for us to do that, just out of the kindness of their hearts. And they're the unsung heroes, because we'd all just be playing in the dark, plugged in to amps with nothing behind it. You'd be playing with like your Mark IV drum kit with like your grandma's old pillow, just keep it from bonging back. Like they're the guys that make the machine work.
More all ages venues, that's the only thing. Like it's really, and that's not just local scene, that's the whole scene, right? Like it's hard because we'll book tickets to go to a show and Aoife will be super excited. She's like, oh cool, I love that band. And be like, yeah, unfortunately you can't come with us. And she just doesn't get it because it shouldn't exist. Like we should be working harder to make it more accessible because kids love the same things we do. They want to be a part of everything, and what better way to keep your kids out of trouble than fostering a love of art, music, anything. So just the only thing that I think we would change is just making sure that everything is all ages, that kids are always included, and that the new generation can be fostered and accepted and you know, like have those experiences from a younger age. So.
Yeah, even if it takes having a beer garden at venues, like the adults don't mind being in a caged area.
Yeah. Also,
we'll get over
like
it.
nobody's going to be upset about less beer spilt in the mosh pits.
Yeah.
I can have kids in here, I can have teenagers in here and stuff like that. I know that this summer that's going to be my new hard thing to control because we're still serving alcohol. But I'm kind of geeking out a little bit about it because a decade at Fernando's, where I know everyone in there is 19 plus, is cool. That's awesome, right? It's wild. Don't have to worry about some poor kid getting stomped out in a mosh pit or something like that. But we would have bands come in where it's like our bass player's 17. Okay, by law in BC, they're allowed to be in here to perform. I just need him to put this bracelet on so we know. And like, he's got to be outside, like he can't eat with you guys. But we're still stoked for you guys to play, and we'll still try and cater to you guys. But to have kids in as fans, come on, we were all kids growing up in like Southern Ontario. 16 years old, we were going to Oshawa to like these hole in the walls where you saw this crazy punk band and it was awesome and it fueled you, and like as a teenager, as a kid, you're just like, yeah, you know. And when I go to like Iron Maiden or Slayer or something like that, and you see some dad with their kid and he's got like the like gun range muffs on to protect his hearing, and you're just like, sick, dude. If I had kids, that would totally be me. Like, get them, like hook them young, right? Like I have my nieces, as soon as they were 6 and they seemed like interested in music, I bought them an electronic drum kit. I bought them like a keyboard, like I bought them a guitar. I'm like, and they jumped into music lessons. And I was like, sick. Like, you guys are gonna be like the next Tegan and Sarah or whatever, right? Like 2 sisters, and yeah, get the youth in here. So I'm really excited this summer to see if kids will come out. And I'm also terrified at how I control that. Like, 12-year-olds in here, I know I'm not gonna serve them booze, but like, I mean, I carted 2 kids the other day and one was 20. I'm like, what? You look like 15, man. So that's gonna be an interesting venture to cross this summer with having local musicians in here. But absolutely, kids need to be exposed to music. I was, as a kid, every road trip was Bob Seger and AC/DC, and it was a sing-along where my dad's like, we're cruising down the 401 and we're all singing at the top of our lungs kind of thing. And as soon as I could, like I said, we were going to Oshawa and going downtown Toronto and catching these crazy shows. Like, I saw Tribe Called Quest and De La Soul in '93. I think I was like 16 years old or something like that. And it was like, we thought we were gonna die, but it was just like adrenaline and like crazy. I think kids are kind of missing out on that, like especially in the wake of COVID, where cool, I don't have to leave the house. Like my niece was like, we paid for the Billie Eilish like live stream during COVID, and I was like, that's cool and all, but you're missing out on the experience of like getting sweat on and spit on by the rest of the crowd that's just as amped, and like going back to like in metal shows, helping your brother up from the floor. Like, I saved some kid's life when I saw Guar down in Vancouver back in like '99, 2000, and he was getting stomped. He had turtled, and I was like, oh no. You know, like we're right in the mosh pit and Guar is like blood getting sprayed on us, and I just see this guy, and I just reached down and pulled him up, and like the look in the kid's face, he just like grabbed me and was like, thank you. And I was like, no problem, and then turned and like some demon baby puke vomited into my eyes off the stage, and it was like, ah, right? Like, it was so crazy and awesome. But you have that camaraderie that I think kids are missing out right now because they've been living the live stream and they're not going to shows, and I'm really hoping that with the hopefully putting COVID behind us and having all restrictions lifted, and I want to see kids coming out, and I think parents should be like booting their kid out the door, be like, get out and go to this show, like live, because they're really falling to the wayside on, well, I don't have to go out, they're streaming the show, I can, you know, be at home and like, it's cool. I'm sure my parents worried about me, but that's part of growing up is having the actual experience. And so I think kids should be out at shows way more often.
You know, like I put on this show a while back, and I'll try and keep the names out of it, but like somebody was like, why did you get that band? Like they're not very good. And it's like, because they're from my town. They're my people. Like, and they're not awe-inspiring yet. Maybe they will, or maybe one of them will, or maybe maybe their friendship has just blossomed into something that really meant something. Like, here's the thing, as a promoter, there are people that went to my shows that met the person they had their children with. There are people that met their significant others. There are people who, met future bandmates. That's what you're trying to build.
Unless we become a Canadian destination to watch music, it's going to be the same. You're going to have bands that cut their teeth and go into bars and play gigs, and eventually, if they get too big or they want to advance their career, they're not going to stay here. Not at this point, because we're not a music city, although there are music lovers that live here. I don't think Kelowna's heart is in it, to be honest with you. You have the venues that are, trying to make ends meet and pay their bills, and then you got the musicians that, lug their gear to the show. They are a good band, and they think they deserve more to get paid. But like, I was just in Nashville, and along Broadway, which is a vibrant music strip, it's about the same length as Bernard, but every doorway is a bar, and there's a band in every door. There's no cover charges anywhere. And bands work in like 6-hour shifts, and they move from bar to bar along Broadway. And those bands are only getting paid $32 per band member to perform for 6 hours. So a 4-piece band, polished, is only getting $120, but you have a dedicated audience of tourists that go there, fly there on airplanes every day to listen to music. So the musicians compensate what they don't get paid from the venue with the tips they make from the tourists that are excited to watch them. And you don't have that in Kelowna. Like, and I'm talking, that's Music City, USA, that's 1 million people, and every day people are there to watch music. I think in BC, the people that are making the most money on music are the festival organizers, like the people that started Shambhala and the people that started Base Coast. They use the Merritt Mountain Music Grounds. Like, those people on a BC level are the people that are making money. It's not the bars, and it's not the musicians, and it's not like the bars are holding back all of this unforeseen cash and not sharing with the musicians. It's a grind. The musicians, they can't expect more. And then on a small town level, Kelowna, when you have, like, let's say you got 4 bands that make the circuit around the downtown core. They play O'Flanagan's, they play Doc Willoughby's, they play Grateful Fed, and wherever they go, they're booked because they bring 50, 60 of their friends, and their friends support them and they love them, and it's a night out for their community, right? They show up. But I've booked out-of-town acts, and I'll put a local act on right before, because I think, oh, well, they're going to fill the room, and then this band from Toronto is going to have an audience. And I've watched the local band play, and then everybody get up and leave my establishment, and the band performs for like 3 people. I call it the Mutual Admiration Society. So, like, local people, everybody likes hanging out with their friends, drinking beers, and going to listen to their friends patting each other on the backs. And it's beer league band, not unlike beer league hockey teams, And until people that live in Kelowna in general go out and say, I just want to go to whatever venue it is, whether it's a winery or a restaurant or a theater, until they go out and say, I don't know them, but I love music, and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna pay the ticket price, and I'm gonna maybe become a new fan, things aren't really gonna change in my humble opinion. But like I said, like during my tenure, I had a great time with all my friends, and there were some really talented, amazing people, and I have some, you know, lifelong friends because of it, and I wouldn't trade my memories for anything. But it's hard when people won't show up to a band they don't know.
I would just like to be able to go online and look at all the venues on a spreadsheet, look at the ones that have holes, where they need bands, and then what kind of bands they need. I click the link, and then I submit my track or whatever, or my demos, and then they could just organize that shit, rather than having it be just kind of a free-for-all where only the people who know people get to play, and only the people who are highly practiced and whatever else get to play. Like there's not a lot of room for the little guy who doesn't know people, you know, like, you know, has a specific style of music that he or she wants to promote or whatever. It's just like, how do you get a show when you don't know? Not all venues are the same size, right? So we should be able to figure out which venues have what capacities, and that should all be public information, and there should be like bookers that are searching out new bands, and there should be brand new bands playing alongside with established bands, and there should be everything in between, solo acts and duos and trios, and it should all just be like happening, you know what I mean? Like on a regular basis. There should be like a band playing at every venue, and as you walk down the street, you should be able to hear the music coming out. Like they should have speakers on the outside of their buildings pumping out the music that you hear inside, so attracting the people. And so if at, you know, Denenzi's it's too heavy for you, well then you walk down and you go to whichever other venue, and it's like, oh, this is more our style, and it's like a little jazz band, perfect jazz band. Let's go and relax and, you know, talk and have a little romantic situation or whatever. But, you know, like there should be bands playing on a regular basis, and walk-ins. Like the downtown should be known for that. That would be ideal. Like if you just had this thriving music scene downtown every single weekend or whatever, people would flock to downtown to come and check it out because they know it's there. Whereas right now they don't really know what's happening where and whatnot, and it's pretty tough. I think the opening of a brand new venue would be like, it's really cool. Not that I'm able to do that or I even know how that would happen, but like getting a nice big fresh venue would be sweet, and then it could be run however, and it would be, if it was a musicians venue run by musicians for musicians, you'd be looking at such a huge turnout, I think, because you'd be getting all the musicians that would want to play. And regardless of if you were attracting thousands of people or not, you know, the venue would be ideally supported by the local government as well, you know, like supported straight up, like a place for people to play. And whether people come into that door and give you $10 at the door or $20 at the door or not, that the musicians shouldn't be afraid of the venue closing because we're not attracting hundreds and hundreds of people every single weekend, you know, because this is a big deal. The arts is huge, and, you know, like you could integrate so many different art forms into one single venue. As long as it was big enough, you could have art on the walls, you could have a ton of different things happening, you know what I mean? Like all the different artisans, showcases, and all crazy things. So that's the mistake, is a lot of these venues are something else first that attract those people, and like a bunch of foodies. Like foodies don't give a shit about music all the time. Like they want to eat, they want to eat a fancy little meal, and they don't want to be bothered by rock and roll or whatever.
Venues will only really accept bands that their clientele are for sure going to enjoy, right? I don't know, like Odenfist has played a wedding, and playing a wedding is a different feel, because like 5 of those people are excited to see the metal band, and then the rest of those people are like, there's a metal band? right? They're like, this is a wedding. And what do you mean there's a metal band, right? So like venues, for example, are going to, like, if they're like a Western style kind of feel, they're probably going to stick to that country feel, right? Would they be successful with metal? If they hired West Metal Entertainment to come on board and put on a show, they would be pleasantly surprised. Are they going to take that leap? I imagine business is probably good enough for them that they don't need to take that leap, right? So the stigma is, if they're doing well, why screw it up?
Kelowna transit system is not very approachable, especially late at night. Like, yeah, I think the last buses most of the time finish at like midnight at the latest, and that's like kind of like, maybe the university ones run a little later, but that's like one bus that goes just down the main strip. And if you live anywhere else in the sprawling city of Kelowna, like, they are not, yeah, there aren't very many buses and they don't run late enough. And yeah, like, it's not a very well-designed transit system. So yeah, I think that a better system, maybe more buses, more like frequently later, because like even here, like, I know if I'm gonna bus somewhere, I have to leave like 2 hours before I actually have to be there, because the bus sometimes doesn't even come, or it comes late, or it doesn't, you know, it comes way too early and you're standing there being like, no. And then, yeah, so more buses more frequently and later would help a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, if I could take anything out of the music industry equation, it would be social media. I appreciate the times where it does connect us and does get our music out there, but it's just grown into such a larger beast, and it consumes so much of an artist's time, and you know, they should be creating music. So I think that, you know, just sensationalism, hype, fads, social media, you know, once you kind of remove that, or you have the ability to filter that out, then you start to find the real, you know, quality art and music that's out there. And of course, that's all subjective. You know, if you like that specific brand of whatever it is, that's totally fine, you know. But for me, I would try and I would get rid of all the social media.
Really hard for me to understand where I should be putting my energies and whatnot in terms of my social media presence, and where it should be focused, and who I should be promoting, and like what and everything. And so I find the social media thing is really tough for me. Maybe it's because I'm a little older and I wasn't really raised with social media. You know, like I only got a cell phone not even so long ago. I just have a hard time getting musicians to my space to practice, or finding a different space to practice. That's been really challenging, just with everybody's schedules and everything. But I'm able to kind of recuperate on the other side, and I just make advances in songwriting and practicing and whatnot. So there's no wasted time per se. But I do find that trying to find a jam space and get the jams happening and rehearsals and whatnot is really tricky. Yeah, like I could be practicing more by myself. I could be reaching out more to local people and trying to get just stuff happening and like my name out there. And I mean, this is part of why I wanted to do this so bad, was I kind of really was like, yeah, these guys are in the scene, you know what I mean? I wanted to get in there and chat with you guys and see what you guys thought about everything and just connect, you know?
When I was at the peak of my promoting, a lot of it was done in, you know, venues of age, do the drinking. That changes the dynamics quite a bit. First of all, getting licensed for all ages, where you can still serve alcohol, is not very easy. There's a lot of red tape when it comes to that. So it's not easy, but it's something that the scene needs, though. We need to have something that appeals to all ages, and that, you know, to the generations that are up and coming. In Kelowna specifically, due to the nature of the city here, with the hospitality industry being what it is, and a lot of nightclub life and things like that, those are the venues that are typically set up the easiest to receive a band. And make no mistake about it, you still had to really retrofit these places in order to make it work. Transitioning from a DJ's setup to a band setup was was not an easy task, and it took all kinds of creativity. It was a lot of work. Randy knows this very well.
Many late nights.
Flat-footed late nights. Oh man, I've got some delusional footage of that. But they're typically the most set up for it. But then you're kind of dealing with the logistics of the venue, because you can't really compromise their business structure either. Otherwise, you lose that venue that can host a band. So yeah.
Yeah, it seems like with a lot of venues, there's always a compromise between them running as a venue and like trying to do the live music.
Yeah.
Sorry, the restaurant and stuff like that. So
yeah,
it's like, do we bring in live music and risk, scaring regular customers out? Like, I don't know. It's always a balance.
Yeah, and you do have to be considerate of it too. It's tough because as a promoter, you're kind of a middleman. You're a middleman between many moving parts. Yeah. So you have your agent. You got to keep the agent happy, and that sometimes even means taking shows that aren't going to necessarily sell tickets to keep that relationship intact. Then of course you have the customer, which is the most important. The fans and the community is the most important. So you got to make sure that their experience is comfortable, but you can't necessarily neglect the fact that the venue you're dealing with has a business model that they have to operate within, and if they don't, they could lose a lot of money, and then all of a sudden you've lost what little that you had to begin with. So you're constantly walking this tightrope. And when I got into promoting myself, honestly, I knew a few things about it because I've always been a band guy as well. But to the level that it ultimately went, I knew almost nothing. And so when I got tossed into this, all because I just wanted a place to play, is how that all came about. It was, hey, I have a band, Kelowna's lacking venues. I have an opportunity here. Let's make this work because we need to get this music going on. And but you do have to walk a tightrope, and it's not easy. You're never going to please everybody, whether it's a venue person or staff, sometimes customers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's challenging.
One of the primary issues that I see that separates a lot of places. So to unite a music scene, period, you need to have more music. To have more music, you need to have more spaces to play. To have more spaces to play, you need to have a venue that can work like that, right? A lot of the issues that I see with venues is they're put on privately, right? So a private venue is started up, and then that private venue kind of tries to make a go of it. And like, how many venues have we all seen fail? You know what I mean? They start up, they've got these great ideas and these great aspirations, and their business plan is solid, and they're doing their best, but it's not working as best as they had hoped, right? And then 2 to 5 years down the road, they shut down, and it doesn't work out, right? The way to fix that is in my mind, I came up with this idea of like a Canadian venue co-op, right? So what you do is you have CBC radio that connects all of Canada, because we have got one radio station that spans the whole country, right? And then we have we've got the railroad that spans the whole country. Yes, it's built on blood and bone, but like, it spans the whole country. We've got Highway 1 that pretty much goes across the country, right? If we had a string of venues, like I said, I just the working title in my head is the Canadian Venue Co-op, which is basically a not-for-profit membership idea where you have a string of venues, all at least or maximum 8 hours apart from each other, right across Canada. Right? If one's not doing so well, they all function under the same umbrella. So if one's doing really well and one's not doing so well, they can pick it up, right? A united front right across the country. You keep it mid-level, so the venue capacity is around 100 to 150 people large. You take the money from running the venue, and you put it back into the venues. That's what the members are there to make sure that the money is distributed properly throughout these venues to upgrade the things that need to be upgraded. If you got to install like a sleeping arrangement, or even buy buses or vans so that they can go between. You have a more of a socialistic view on how a venue should be operated, rather than a private, I'm here to make money, and if your band isn't making me money, it's not going to be in there. right? If you had a not-for-profit organization running a string of venues across the country, or even just a venue, just start with a venue, right? Whereas like these for-profit places get in there, realize that there's not a lot of money in it, and it's so much work, and then they peace out, right? You get a not-for-profit organization in there. That's what West Metal Entertainment is, right? That puts on the festival. We're a not-for-profit organization. Everyone who's in there, including myself, is an unpaid volunteer, right? I don't think that the venue would be an unpaid volunteer situation, right? Because you'd need someone to run it full time. But the way that you reunite the music scene would be to have some sort of government-funded venue that's run by a not-for-profit, and you throw it across the country, right? If you can have a reasonably priced place that is dedicated to putting on these mid-level shows, include jam spaces in there somehow, you know what I mean? Like, that's how you unite the place. Right now, there's not a lot of those mid-level venues. The business plan doesn't allow for it to happen. So I just, to unite everybody, if you had something like that, that's how you would get a start.